Okay, now we're doing problem 7.5b on page 340, and we're moving over from accounts receivable to notes receivable. Accounts receivable happen in the ordinary course of business, but notes receivable are more formal transactions that have terms, and terms would state the interest rate, how long the note is, and then, as I said, they would have interest on them as well. So on November 1st, it asked us to do the journal entries, and on November 1st, the company, Springer Company, accepted a $4,800 90-day 8% note, granting Steve Jillian a time extension on his past due accounts receivable. So when accounts receivable becomes past due and there's a formal promise to pay, then we have a promissory note or note receivable. So on November 1st, we have a notes receivable, S. Jillian, of $4,800, and we decrease accounts receivable by the same amount because we're telling the readers of the financial statements this is no longer an accounts receivable, this is a notes receivable, so the interest can be collected and it'll take longer to collect. Then on December 31st, it asks us to make adjusting entries to record the accrued interest on the note. So according to the matching principle, we have to show expenses in this period. So for this year, there's been 2 months. From November 1st to December 31st, there's been 2 months of accrued interest. And so our memo would be to record interest earned. And the principal balance is $4,800. It's an 8% interest rate. And your interest rates, you always assume they're annual. So you assume that 8% is to cover 360 days or 12 months. And if we look at days, then we've had 60 of 360 days so far this year, from November 1st to December 31st. And so we have interest receivable because they don't actually pay the interest, but we just accrue it, of $64, which is our calculation. And then we have interest revenue of $64. Then in the next year, on January 30th, we received Jillian's payment for principal and interest on the note that was dated November 1st. So it was a 3-month note. So on January 30th, so we'll continue, and I apologize, I'm pausing every once in a while. I'm recording at home, and I have dogs. So if you hear dogs barking in the background, that's why. So on January 30th, the note was paid off, and so we have cash and interest receivable, interest revenue, and I'll explain these in just a moment, and notes receivable, S. Jillian. Okay, so to record cash received, and the cash received would be the $4,800 times the 8% times, now it's a 3-month note, November, December, January, and so it's 90 of 360 days. Now I'm going to go ahead and show the full amount here because that's how much the customer is going to pay us. So it would be the $4,800 plus the interest that we calculate right here, this $4,800 times 8% times 90 over 360. So this would be $4,896. Now, interest receivable, we had already accrued $64 of the interest, so we have to take that off the books, so decrease that. The remainder, the 30 days, is now going to be interest revenue, and then the $4,800, we reverse that, take that off the books because he no longer owes that amount. Okay, on February 28th, we accepted another note. And so I'm not going to go through every one of these. They're all basically, well, actually, let me do one more. On March 1st, I'm sorry, February 28th, I think if I do one more, you'll get the way that it works. So on February 28th, we accepted a $12,600 30-day 8% note. Now remember, 8% is annual. We always assume that. Dated this day, granting a time extension on the past due accounts receivable from King. And so, just like we did before, we convert it to a notes receivable, King Company, and it's $12,600. And since we're converting it, we take it out of accounts receivable, $12,600. And that's all we have to do there. So then on March 1st, we accepted a $6,200 60-day, 12% noted this day on a past due accounts receivable. So we do the same thing here. And that one was $6,200. Okay, then on March 30th, the King Company dishonored its note when presented for payment. And so when they dishonored the note, it goes back into accounts receivable, King Company, $12,684, because we now have accrued interest on that. And this is why I wanted to go on. I kind of wanted you to see how this one plays out. So we have interest revenue, and I'll show you that calculation, and then notes receivable. So basically what we've done here is we've taken it out of out of notes receivable and put it back into accounts receivable because it was dishonored. Now the interest that was accrued on that, and I'll go ahead and show that calculation here. The interest was the $12,600 times the 8% times, and we did this back on February 28th. So it's 30 of 360 days. It's 1 month's worth of interest, and that amount right there would be $84. So this would actually be the $12,600, the original amount of the note right here that we had. So that's what happens when it's been dishonored. Goes back into accounts receivable. And then I think you'll see later on we'll write it off to the allowance account. I think that's right. So we'll keep going, but that should be what happens. On April 30th, we received payment of principal plus interest from M. Shelley for the March 1 note, because that was a 60-day note. So we have cash received of $6,324. The accounts receivable is paid in full. And so we can take that, notes receivable. We converted that to a notes receivable. So that's paid in full, and that's from M. Shelley. And then we also have some interest revenue that we've received from that note. And so I'm going to show you that calculation here. The $6,200 times the 8%, oh, that one was 12%, times 12%. And it was from March 1st to April 30th, so that's 60 of 360 days on that annualized amount. So the interest revenue is actually the calculation of $124, and then the notes receivable, we take that off the books of the original amount, the $6,200 right here. Okay, on June 15th, we accepted a $2,000 8% note dated this day and granting a time extension on an accounts receivable of Ryder Solon. I don't know how you say that. And so we have notes receivable. And that is $2,000. And we're moving that out of accounts receivable. So we decrease that amount for that customer. And then on June 21st, something very similar. We accepted a $9,500 note from J. Felton. We take that out of accounts receivable. It's been converted to a notes receivable, $9,500. And then on August 26th, the note came due, so we received payment from our SOLON for the note of June 15th. So we have cash, we decrease the notes receivable, no longer on the books because he's paid it off, and then we have interest revenue because it's a note. So to calculate that interest revenue, we would take the $2,000, the amount of the note, times the 8%, times, and this one is 72 of 360 days. The 360 is the annualized amount. So that's the interest revenue. The calculation there would be $34. The note was $2,000, and so the cash that was paid was $2,034. Hopefully this is starting to get easy for you. On September 19th, same thing. We had J. Felton paid off the note. So we have notes receivable, J. Felton. We have interest revenue. And then to calculate that, we take the 9,500 times, and that one was 8%. And it was for, so 9,500 times 8% times 90 days of the 360. So the interest revenue is $190. The notes receivable was $9,500, and so the cash received was $9,690. And that completes problem 7.5b. The next video will be for chapter 8.